Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die, where my goal is to give you evidence that although our bodies will disappear, we survive physical death. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the book We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Today on the show, I'm pleased to introduce you to my friend. Her name is Brandy Faith Weld. I met Brandy a couple years ago at a seminar, and she shared with me a very personal experience she had that really taught her that life after death is real. And I'm really excited that she's here, and she's going to share it with you today. So here's a little bit about my friend Brandy. She's the author of the international #1 best-selling book called Heal Your Heart, Free Your Mind, which includes 9 steps to break free from struggle in your relationships and all areas of your life. Brandy has been involved with spiritual and personal development work for over 26 years. She leads individuals and organizations in peak performance development around the world. And although Brandy's studied in lots of areas like psychology, neuroscience, and quantum physics, her real transformation came after her mom died and when she had a near-death experience. Brandy Faith Weld is a woman on a mission to stop the human suffering that gets passed down from generation to generation and to help liberate all of us from the blocks and patterns that have hindered us in the past. You can find out more about Brandy right on our website, which is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. She is episode number 80, and she's just a beautiful woman. Or you can go to www.jumptoabetterlife.com or find out more about her book at www.brandysbook.com. So Brandy Faith Weld, welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Well, wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Hey, nice to hear your voice, and I tripped over my words because I'm so excited. Yeah, you are a beautiful woman, a beautiful friend, and I'm super grateful that today we can talk. And speaking of talking, I do have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize if I may sniffle a little bit, but just know that that's all that is. But I feel fine.
Awesome. It's a sign that we're in this winter season.
I know, and it's very cold where I live. I live in Massachusetts, and it's hitting about 15 degrees outside right now.
Oh, burr.
Yeah. And where are you talking to us from?
I am actually talking to you right now in Oregon, around Bend, Oregon. So it's very beautiful here, and we have a little bit of snow ourselves here right now.
It's a pretty area. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for being here. So if you wouldn't mind, I know I gave a little bit of an introduction about you, maybe just a little bit about you, kind of in the past, where you came from, and maybe what kind of jobs you started out with, and then like what happened to turn you into this big crusader to make a difference in people's lives, you know?
I was, like it mentioned, I was working in corporate America. And the last big corporate thing I was doing was managing worldwide Salesforce development for Cisco Systems. And,
wow.
Though I was continuing to do my own development, and all of my, personal development first started when I was really young because, I had a lot of childhood pain, and I was trying to figure it all out. So I'd read my mother's books, and my mother had a lot of those kind of psychology and kind of new agey books. And so I would read those, a lot of Wayne Dyer and things like that. And then in my journey, I came across Tony Robbins, Unleash the Giant Within.
Right.
And that really changed things for me because, I used to think that I lived in this video game. Remember the asteroids game where you're like ditching and dodging asteroids all the time?
I sure do.
Yes. We're showing our age, aren't we?
No.
No. And so that's what I felt like. I lived in a video game like that where I was always ditching and dodging the asteroids that were coming at me. And it wasn't until that book, I started to realize that I was creating these asteroids. I was drawing these asteroids to me because I was focusing on all this stuff of feeling sorry for myself.
Right.
And so all of a sudden I felt a little more like, oh, there's a solution, there's, I'm more empowered. I'm not just a victim in this.
Right.
And so I started going to Tony Robbins at a young age and just really, I then, started to try to teach some of the things I was learning within Cisco's system. So a lot of power of mind and power of belief kind of stuff I started bringing into the Cisco's training, kind of under the radar.
Right,
so,
right.
Right, because you're limited at what you can do in a corporate environment. But it wasn't until I was assisting Tony with his last event for Life Mastery in Hawaii, that was the really life-changing, compelling event to get me to really step out in faith and do what I really wanted to do. And that was because it happened on 9/11.
Okay.
And that was such a powerful event because, when we went to bed really late and we're 6 hours, behind. So most of us were all asleep when it happened.
Right.
And so Tony was the one kind of disclosing what happened to everybody because most everybody, had their phones off and stuff. And so when he did, a guy from Palestine was there and he got up and he said, "I'm glad this happened because now you Americans know how it feels."
Wow.
And then an Israeli guy happened to be there and he gets up and says, you guys are the cause of the world's problems because you guys are raised to hate.
Wow.
And so here we had the Middle East problem in the middle of the biggest event to happen on U.S. mainland soil.
Right.
And it was an audience of about predominantly Americans, 4,500 people, predominantly Americans, and a huge New York crowd.
And this is in Hawaii at the retreat? At the work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in Maui. And so, you can imagine the feelings that came up with, during this moment when these two were saying this, or especially the Palestinian guy saying, "I'm glad this happened because now you Americans know how it feels."
Right. Yep.
So, though Tony in his brilliance, he brought them up on stage, and at the end, he got them, hugging each other and going, "I love you, man." And they created an organization called Passion and Action for Peace to bring Just Learn to their respective communities so that they can try to bring, peace to their communities, their countries, right? And almost everybody in the whole world joined that Passion and Action for Peace organization at that moment. And at the end, we are all arm in arm singing, "We are the world, we are the children." And it was so powerful that it made me realize what I really wanted to do was stop things like that from happening. People operating from hate and separation and not realizing that at our core, we are the same, and together we'll get through anything, but in competition and separation, we'll just destroy ourselves. And so it was at that moment I decided to, leave Cisco and step out in faith and do my real work because I was limited to what I could do in a corporate environment. I just wanted to really help people personally with freeing them of their pain. Because it's only hurting people that hurt others,
Right.
So,
but seeing Tony do that live on stage and cause a transformation like that, I would really think you would know then that this is possible, right? I mean, it's possible because that's not the predicted outcome of something like that breaking out in a seminar.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It was powerful. It was divine, of course.
Yeah.
Divinely led.
I would just want to talk a little bit about the name of the show, obviously, is We Don't Die. And I know when I met you in that seminar, you shared with me a pretty personal story that you had. And would you mind I know that was 2001 with the Tony Robbins 9/11 happening, kind of what led you in the world of life after death. And maybe you could share some about your mom. And certainly I want to hear back about everything that you're doing now, because it's all an extremely self-empowerment arena.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. In 2005, my mom died of a brain tumor, and it's quite interesting because I was very connected with my mother,
sure.
and I felt like I only came here to follow her in life. I mean, we're that close, kind of soulmates.
Yeah.
And a year before she died, there's no signs. My mom was really healthy. She did yoga all the time. She was, read lots of spiritual and personal development books, and she ate, healthy, and didn't drink and all that. So there was just no signs for my mom. We weren't, logically worried about my mom, but a year before I would call her crying, going, "Mom, I can't lose you. I don't want to be here without you. I want to go first," and she's like, "What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Are
of
you
course.
Crazy?"
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
And it made no logical sense, but it was like my soul knew that something was coming up, and I was, definitely afraid.
Sure.
And so unfortunately, a year later, we got a phone call. I got the phone call that my dad said, "This is how I found your mother. She's not doing well. We have a CT. We have a CT scan for her, or an MRI, I think it was, for her tomorrow. And if you want to come down." And it was like, then I knew it was happening, and I just hung up the phone, and it was all night. I couldn't sleep. I'm just pacing back and forth. Not my mother, not my mother. God, please don't take my mother. Not my mother, not my mother.
Scary.
Yeah. And so that day, they told her she had a glioblastoma multiforme, and it had taken over her whole left side of her brain, gone through the central part of her brain, and started over to the right side of her brain. And it's, the fastest growing tumor, the most aggressive, fastest growing tumor. And once it gets in the center of the brain, it's inoperable.
Right.
They can't do anything with it. So they gave her 3 months to live. And unfortunately, that's about how long she lived to the day. And then, that's just something I like to say, how powerful diagnoses are.
Yes.
It's from people in white coats. And how that's a common story, that when people get a diagnosis like that, it ends up being to that day, because the power of the mind is so powerful.
I've read a lot about that. Yeah. And I'm sorry about your mom. No matter what I believe in life after death, I also know the most painful thing ever is grief, and when you lose somebody you really love. So I'm sorry. It must have been horrible.
Yeah. Well, it definitely was a life-changing, completely life-changing event. I thought I did my work when I was doing all that other stuff, and I found I really didn't until my mother crossed over. And I was kind of at my existential suffering. I did not want to be here.
No.
And when you're at that low, then, then the divine can really do some work with you. And because your ego, that part of you thinks it's got it all in control and all figured out, can be out of the way. And, things that can really help you can really help you.
Can you give an example of what happened?
Well, because I was at this existential suffering, I just didn't want to be here. And I was in a state of anxiety.
Yeah.
So, what would happen was that the cortisol, I would have adrenaline during the day, and then cortisol would come up at night. And so you're in a constant state of not sleeping.
Right.
And so you're in this anxiety. And if anybody's experienced it, to me, it was hell. And I felt like if this is going to continue, I really don't want to be here.
Right.
This is a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just looking for anything to help me. And I discovered something called Diksha. And it was something that it comes from India.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that really it's kind of like, I don't know if you've heard of Reiki.
Yes, I have. Yep.
Okay. So it's something similar to Reiki, where it's just like a healing energy, and it has a kind of a divine intelligence of what needs to be healed, either emotionally, spiritually, or physically. And so because I was in this state of anxiety, and part of it was because when my mother died, I went through her journals and I found out family secrets that just kind of traumatized my life. Yeah.
Oh no.
It was like all the foundations in which I believed about my family I found weren't, totally true. And so
man,
all of my foundations had been shaken, and I didn't feel like I had a safe place. And so, but from these secrets that I found out, I had a lot of anger at people, and I was having some anger, kind of blaming people for my mother's death, if you will. And so when I had this Diksha, what I experienced was I left, the event where they gave me the Diksha. I'm peaceful and nice, but it's like, okay, I don't know what that was. It's all energy. It's kind of a little woo-woo, right?
Right.
And I went home and I went to sleep, and I woke up an hour later and my whole body was vibrating, and it was vibrating specifically right in the liver area. And it was vibrating so much there that it was almost painful, and I was just really freaked out. I didn't know what I just did to myself. So I called my dad and I told my dad, hey Dad, I don't know what I just did to myself, but this is the person's name and number if anything happens to me.
Okay.
I was that freaked out, right? And so what I experienced, though, was, the next day I was a little out of it because I hadn't slept, all night with this energy. But the day after was like I had all the knowledge of all the things that had happened, but like all the charges was gone, and all of a sudden the anxiety was gone, and I was able to sleep. And so I felt really good. And before, I was really uncomfortable to be around. Like I couldn't cry. I couldn't talk to you about the weather without crying.
I know exactly what you're speaking of. How do you spell that word? Deepsha? Is that what you're saying?
Diksha, DeekshA.
Okay. I'm just writing that down, just something to research. How about the story you had told me when I met you at the seminar about, was it John Edwards, and that your dad didn't believe in life after death?
Yeah.
What happened there? Because you and your mom did, right?
Yeah, so me and my mom, when he had a show, Crossing Over, and we used to watch it every day. If we couldn't watch it, we taped it. So we didn't miss a day. So both her and I just, we made an agreement because, before this, after I left Cisco, I went on I traveled around the world. And so she was worried about me. And so we had an agreement at that time, like whoever died first, we'd meet at John Edward. So when she was dying, I know, it's good. It's good to make a meet. If you have these belief systems, it's good to make an agreement with the people you love.
Right.
It's like we knew. So when she was dying, I said, remember, Mom, where we're meeting? She said, yep, John Edward. And so after she died, I went to see where he was going to be speaking closest to me because he was no longer on TV and he was traveling around the United States. And a lot of times it's like 2,500 people an event, and at best 10 people get read.
Oh yeah, they're humongous. Yep.
Yeah. So, the benefit. Oh, so I looked to see when he was going to be speaking the closest to me, and it was on her actual birthday.
Okay.
August 14th. And so I'm like, that's the one we have to go to. And so I, told my dad, and he decided to go just because, to console me when she didn't come through, because he thought when you died, you went to dust.
Exactly.
And so, yeah. And then I had a boyfriend come too because he thought it was all BS, and he was going to come just to prove that it was all BS, right?
Right.
So I came there with my two skeptics, and normally, actually, at John Edwards events, it's normally the skeptic that gets read because they need it the most.
Yes.
And so, but also because my mother watched him for so long, she knew how to get his attention before everybody else. So he was doing what he normally does. He says, when I say above you, I mean this. And he goes, okay, in just 1 minute, I'm coming over here with a mother energy. And he goes, okay, if I say beside you, I mean this. If I say below you, I mean this. Okay, I have a mother energy right here who died of a brain tumor. And
wow.
So I jump up. I mean, he's pointing right at me, right? You jump up, and so he's like really specific. He's saying, that's Patricia's daughter. He should say, tell her hi.
Wow.
And then he goes to my dad and he says, she's telling me to tease you about a man in a little Bo Peep outfit, full on with the bonnet and the staff. And, and all of a sudden I look at my dad and he just starts bawling, crying instantly.
Oh, what was that?
And and my boyfriend who's there, that they're meeting for the first time, like, my dad's like almost collapsing. He's like catching my father. My dad's like almost collapsing, crying. So here, my skeptic boyfriend is going, oh my God, the skeptic dad is being affected by this, right? And crying. Right. And so anyways, and me and my dad were having this kind of a lot of fighting during this time period with my mom's death. And so I'm just like kind of at the time going like, what the hell, Dad, and so it wasn't until afterwards the reading I got to find out what that was about. And it was because when my mom had died, he had gone to a park in which him and my mother used to go to all the time. That's it's right next to a river. And he was walking next to this river, and crying. And then he sat on a bench that's next to a river that him and my mother used to sit on, and he had his hands down on his head, crying. And then all of a sudden, he felt an arm around him. And he looked up, and it was a man in a little Bo Peep outfit with the bonnet, with a staff. Yeah, consoling him, but also kind of flirting with him too.
Oh, right? My gosh, yeah.
So he never told anybody this ever. And so he knew that there's no way that John could have known this if it wasn't, my mother saying that she was there. And so that made my dad a believer because, and my mom knew she had to tell him something that he couldn't justify, right? That, he couldn't guess that, he probably said something that, could be similar to everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. What an awesome story. It was just him at the park and the little Bo Peep and John Edwards saw it. That's pretty cool.
And how it transformed him so much was that, it was her birthday. So he went and took her out to her favorite restaurant that night for her birthday.
Oh.
And he took her to her favorite show, and he had a seat next to him, and he held her hand during the whole show. And
Randy, that's so special.
isn't that?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, all of a sudden I found out he's like sneaking off to scene where John Edward's going to be close to him again so he could try to have, another connection. And he started experiencing things around the house that, he wouldn't have ever probably experienced if he didn't have this new belief. So like, for instance, my mom and dad had his and her sinks in their, master bedroom.
Yeah.
And on her side, there was one of those, push soaps, the bottle soaps that you push.
Pretty funny.
Like he only used his side. He never even used that side, right? It just started spewing out when he's there. Like,
yep.
Just, musical, like music boxes and stuff like that would start, playing music. Yeah, without anything. So she started letting him know that she was around and, he wasn't freaked out. And it was beautiful. So
yeah,
that
goes to show you that, grief is always going to be hard because it is a physical process, but when you do have that belief or those signs, it can really make a difference. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was such a beautiful gift. And also I want to share that my mom was trying to utilize John to counsel me and my dad. So because we were having this kind of fight and falling out, she was like trying to bring us together, through John. And
wow.
So that was really interesting as well.
Wow. And so were you left with the same, I'm assuming you were, the same wow factor and really feeling comforted?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You watch it and you believe it so much, but it's a whole different experience when you actually physically experience it and it's no question like that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's different when you see other people that you don't know have readings, but when you personally have it. Yeah.
I mentioned in your bio that you said something about a near-death experience. Did you yourself have a near-death experience?
Yeah. So in 2008, I was in Fiji and I was kind of assisting with a program that was a oneness program that was on Tony's property on Savu Savu, and we had like a 2-week break between events. So I went traveling by myself to the other islands. And when I was traveling, I went to I went hiking, had where you could sign up for excursions. And so I and a few other people signed up for a hiking in the jungle there in the rainforest. And so we went hiking in the rainforest and we were doing those kinds of things during the day because we're going to do a night dive that night. And so
scuba dive.
Scuba diving, yeah.
Okay, something else I didn't know about you. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so I, he asked us if we wanted to go see this hermit that lived at the bottom of the hill. And we said yes. And, I don't remember in part, but they say he most likely shouldn't have brought us down because it was a really wet, narrow trail. And then there was this log that was blocking it that he was helping us over. But we made it down there safely and saw the hermit, and we were on our way back up, and everybody else was way ahead of me. And then me and there was one guy way behind us, and the guide was helping me over this log, and him and I both fell.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but and only the guide knows. And I never saw him again, so I don't know what happened. But I hit my head. I hit my head on a rock on my way down. And what the guy that was there, so the guy that was way behind, he just saw the guide holding somebody's hand falling, but he didn't know who it was.
Right.
By the time he came up. So he went down, climbed down there, and he then was there with me, and why, like everybody else, went and got help. And what he experienced me was just kind of being gone for about a half an hour, and then I came to and was, vomiting, and then I was like, where am I? What happened?
Right.
And then and then he would tell me, and then I would, I would ask him the same question over and over and over again. But what I experienced was, crossing, like kind of just ending up in this other dimension and there was my mother, and she was she didn't look how I saw her when she died. So when she died, she had gray hair. She was 59 years old. But she wasn't dyeing her hair, and her hair was gray, and so she didn't look how she looked when I saw her last, but she looked like when she was in her 30s, and but I didn't put it together. It was like my first response was just like, "Oh my God, Mom, you're alive! All that was a bad dream." Like I thought everything else that had happened was all just a bad dream, and that this was real, and that she was alive. And then, of course, I was, told otherwise. But of course, it's not speaking. It's just kind of like, it's just like a downloading, right? It's just like a knowing. It just comes into you. So it's hard to kind of just describe that. But I was told what no and what happened, and it was kind of like in this beautiful green grass, area, and kind of hilly, and flowers all around, and I had all of my deceased animals around me too, and I could yeah, and it's like I could really feel them. It was like, I could feel my horse had her head over my shoulder, and it was like breathing, on my neck. And then I was sitting on the ground, and I could feel my cat just kind of rubbing its, behind my legs, and my dogs, like, in their heads in my lap, and it was just,
it's pretty awesome.
It was so awesome. You're just like, surrounded by this love.
Then what happened?
Well, I, was kind of shown what I had been doing all of my life, like, how I was like stuck in this victim consciousness, and how I was keeping myself stuck in this victim consciousness. And I was kind of shown this, this human suffering that happens and how it happens, and then was being shown what I had been taken through after my mom had died, that I wasn't like totally getting,
What do you mean?
So meaning I knew I was taken through it, but I wasn't totally getting the whole why and all the pieces and how it was all fabricated together. And because of all of this human conditioning that we receive, that gets passed down from generation to generation. So like the whole tapestry got shown to me. So the what happens and how, and then what I was being guided and taken through once I crossed over, but I wasn't fully getting it. And so it all came into this this knowing, so before we have intellectual experience or knowledge, but here it's just like a downloading of a knowing,
right,
an awareness. And so, yeah.
So you got the big picture.
I got the big picture, and anyways, like I had already said, I always wanted to be. I didn't want to be here most of my life. I only felt like I was only here to follow my mother,
right.
And then when that whole feeling that she was going came, I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to go first. And then after everything happened, I, really didn't want to be here and was at that existential suffering. And so, of course, when I was there, I wanted to stay there with my mother because I spent my whole life feeling like the world that I wanted to live in couldn't exist here on the earth, and that only existed on the other side. And so that's why I longed to be on the other side. And so, I was exactly where I wanted to be, and very happy. It's as you know, from I think everything that's everybody has shared with you, and I think even from your own experiences, the amazing amount of love that you feel there. Right. This unexplainable amount of love, and joy and happiness, and so you don't want to leave that. And especially when you're then there with the ones that you love the most, and you never wanted to be separate from to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
But you seem to wake back up on planet Earth.
I was told that I had to come back, that I had to come back, and part of why I had to be taken over there actually was to put me in my body, because I spent most of my life not wanting to be there, that I wasn't really fully being really living, and it was like I was kind of waiting to be able to leave,
Right.
And I was like I was kind of, people would a lot of times also experience me that I was, kind of up with my head, I just never like really integrated into the body. And so they, so they were, showing me all this, and that I needed to fully, be in my body and fully, experience life, fully be and participate, and that I had to, share this message. And they were showing me that that I was always longing for could exist, and that we were moving into it right now. But, I needed to do my part in sharing this to help us to move into that shift of consciousness that we are, in this time period that is happening now. And I came back different. I came back with a different knowing. And I came back for the first time, like excited to live, and knowing that I was a spiritual being having this human experience, and, what kind of human experiences do I want to have? And it was the first time I was, really, truly, fully like living and excited about living and what I wanted to experience, versus like kind of just waiting till when I could go. And I got fully put into my body, and it was the first time I experienced how much the body felt. Like, I didn't know that the body felt so much, because I, for the most part, was never in it. And so when I first got in the body, it felt like, I didn't know that it felt so much, and it just felt so uncomfortable. And It was like that for about 2 months. Of just feeling like, wow, this body feels so much, and then I feel like it integrated in like 2 months, and I felt normal like everybody else. But the also thing I experienced when I came back was beyond that, was that that love that we are, that we get to experience. We're over there. When it tried to be put back into this container, it couldn't contain it. And I really felt like I was going to implode. Like I felt like so much that there was so much love that I couldn't, it was just too much in this body that I would implode. But it was beautiful because felt like, wherever I was, there was love. There was no longer that concept of needing love outside of myself and looking for love outside myself. Like wherever I was, it was there.
That's pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome, right? Except for the fact that I was like, it was so much that I couldn't contain it, And so as time went on, I felt that kind of become less and less too. It started to,
I can't even begin to imagine that feeling, Brandy. So I'm listening to you like love is wonderful. And I love those moments that I feel it, but just like too much, I'm going to explode. I can't handle it. I'm like, what? Anyway, so from that experience, obviously it's transformed your life because who you are now and what you're up to is some pretty big stuff. And I know your book has just pretty recently come out within this past, year and a half, something like that?
About a year ago. It was Valentine's Day last year, 2015.
Yeah, so a year, yeah. And the name of your book, remind us what the name of your book is. Heal Your Heart, Free Your Mind. Oh, you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so, the book is really about, healing, how it's really driving most of our life without our awareness. And that, most people, we give a lot of credit to the mind, right? There's a lot of focus on the mind and the brain. And really, the real power is actually in the heart, and that the heart is 5,000 times more powerful electromagnetically than the brain. And that it's actually really the heart that is delivering messages to the brain. So the heart is delivering far more messages to the brain than the brain is sending to the heart. And the heart is more sending messages to the brain that then the brain then reacts and then sends these chemicals into the body from what the heart sent.
Interesting.
Yeah. So really our power is in our heart. So it's really, really, really important what our heart is processing through, right? So because that is what's determining what what your heart is broadcasting out to the world. And, a lot of people don't know that our hearts are always communicating with each other. So, so it's kind of like, we have, how like we have a wireless internet, out there and or we have radio waves or TV waves that are all around us and they're crossing around us all the time, but we can't see them.
Right.
But if we have a receiver at the other end, we can hear them. We can hear the radio broadcast. We can get the TV broadcast, and it's the same thing with our hearts. Our hearts have their own little, I call it the human net, and they're all communicating with each other and they are, responding to each other. So have you ever had that experience where you don't know anything about this person, but just there's something about them when you're around them, you just feel uncomfortable and you want to get away from them?
Yep, or vice versa.
Or
somebody
vice versa.
You want to be close to, somebody you feel like you've known forever.
Yes, exactly. That too. Or a lot of times people might experience this too, like when they're really close with somebody, especially like a significant other, that your hearts kind of get in sync, and it's almost like you know what the person's thinking and they don't need to tell you, right?
So that's coming through our heart?
Our hearts are always communicating with each other, and they're always broadcasting out to the world. And so it's really your heart that's broadcasting out to the world that the world is responding to. And so however our life is, the world is just responding to what our hearts are broadcasting out. And, a part of that is that almost 50% of our personality is already created by the time we are born. So much of this stuff just gets passed down from generation to generation that we don't even realize that we have inside of us. So we have no cognitive memories of these things that we're programmed with. But really, in nature's in its design and its intelligence, what it does is it downloads massive of information from the mother into the child so that the child is able to survive in the environment in which it's about to be born into. Okay. So it has to download everything that the mother, everything that's in the mother's neural network, right? So everything that the mother has experienced, everything that the mother has, that she has in her programming. So it's not just what your mother eats, drinks, that affects the development of the baby, but it's also whatever she goes through while you are in the womb that gets programmed and downloaded into you. But also everything that she knows about the society conditioning, right? And the environment in which she lives and the environment she grew up in. All of that is getting programmed into the child so it can survive in the environment in which it's about to be born into. And then also we have these imprinting years from, age of 0 to 7 that our mind is really kind of, it gets, in our younger years, it's in theta, which is basically a hypnagogic trance state, till about the age of 3 or 4 years old. The theta state still stays till around 6 or so, but it's dominant till about 3 or 4, and your alpha brain doesn't start taking activity until around 3 or 4, or whatever your earliest memory is a sign of when your alpha brain started taking activity.
Oh, so a lot of times,
yeah. So that's normally around 3 or 4. Do you remember your earliest memory?
Yes.
Yeah. And about what age do you think that was?
It was about 4. I got lost at Disneyland. that's
and it's very, normally it's a very traumatic event.
Oh, yeah.
You really remember.
Oh, yeah. But being in that theta age, this what I heard before, those images and messages that come through to you, you actually believe are reality. So it's the things that happen so early on that kind of become your truth, right?
Exactly. These are called the imprinting years, and your body, your mind is just downloading the information for future playback. So that's how the subconscious mind is designed. It's a recording playback mechanism. That's
Plus,
all it is.
You're getting downloaded the 50% of your that's been passed on. So pretty much now, if you had a very empowering parents, then that's all good. But unfortunately, I think some of the baggage is passed down subconsciously that we don't even know. So
majority of it, unfortunately, most in our generations before us, most of our parents weren't growing up in this kind of age of personal development and being looking at it and processing and being honest about it. Right? They were programmed to pretend everything's okay and don't talk about it and shove it down. Right. So unfortunately, most of them didn't do their processing out. So for a lot of us got programmed with a lot of the stuff that they went through and the generations before them.
Well, yeah, and I think when we're in it, nobody knows you can break free of it because you just think that happened, because that's all in your near-death experience. It's major wow, just to see your mom and even your animals. But I know part of your book, because I've downloaded it on Kindle, is you have 9 steps to break free from struggle in your relationships and all areas of life. And obviously, we don't have too much time left. Can't go through all 9. But what I always love is if our guest could empower both myself, yourself, and the listener, that there's something that we could maybe do today or learn today that can help us in our life now. So is there any one of those steps that you might be able to share with us, or just something that you feel called to share that might make a difference for one of us that's been stuck in a pattern or just stuck?
Yes. So, we talked about that our heart is broadcasting all this stuff out and the world is just responding to it. So however our life is right now is a printout of what our heart is broadcasting out. And so that is like a first sign for you to see what your heart's broadcasting out, because the problem is that, we don't know all the stuff that happened 50%, by the time we're born, these imprinting years we have no knowledge of. there's a large part of us that is broadcasting out that we have no cognitive memories of. So those are the most difficult to, break free of and get past.
Right.
Are those things. And so if we have like these, patterns that keep showing up in our life over and over again, and no matter what we do, we can't seem to get past them.
Right.
This is the stuff that we need to get out of our energetic being. And so the first way to be able to see what you're broadcasting out is, one, to take a look at how your life is, but two, a way to keep kind of clearing it is to get out of the blame game. So whenever something comes up and you get like a charge, or emotion around it, don't think the problem is in the other person, but recognize that they're just mirroring something that you're broadcasting out. And whatever it's making you feel is an indicator of what it is that is, programmed in your neural network that you're broadcasting out. And then that's to, take responsibility for that and find out what it is that is mirroring in us that still needs to be, acknowledged and healed and moved out, and then take the steps to do that. Of course, which is all of what my book does and all of which my program does, my 8-day retreat. Then we can be free of that, and we no longer will have that kind of same experience that we've been having. So
can you give us a tool that we can use without, and I do suggest everybody read Brandy's book, but is there anything you can give us now just to empower us today if we've got some kind of maybe a reaction to something, or like a negative habit or something that we just can't shake?
So when something is showing up that you're having this charge, I recommend that you take some time to yourself out, and there's many ways you can do it. What you need to do is you need to bypass your mind, and we need to get some support beyond your mind of where this comes from. So if you believe in a God or anything like that, universe, if you kind of pray to that, angels, if you believe in angels, kind of pray to angels and say, hey, show me where this is coming from, and let me fully feel and experience it. I don't want to hide it. I don't want to shove it down. I don't want to pretend it's not there anymore. I want to be free of it. So show me where it's totally coming from, and let me fully feel and experience it so that I can be free of it. And so it's a different way of being, because most of us have been conditioned to just pray to God, please take this away from me.
Yeah.
Right? But the only way out is through. I say the only way out of suffering is through suffering, but not in this long, hard way. It's super quick when we actually embrace and say, hey, let me fully feel it and experience it, and you get through it, and then it gets out of your energetic being, because everything's energy, and it's just energy stored in your energetic being, and if it gets to process it, it moves out, because energy is designed to move. So and it's the mind that keeps it stuck, because the mind is designed to avoid pain and gain pleasure, so it's always trying to distract you and shove it back down. And that's why, people get stuck with this stuff, because they spend most of their life just distracting themselves. So the first step is to, fully face it and stop distracting yourself. Right?
That's like brilliant. I never thought I didn't know what you were going to say truthfully, but I know from past everything, like what you resist persists. Yep. Even people who are grieving, you try to distract yourself so you won't feel it. But when you actually feel it and you live through whatever comes up, it can pass through. Yep. But never, ever, ever, ever have I heard when something comes up. Because I do know, like, our mind wants to take over, make other people wrong, make us wrong. It just never shuts up. But what you're saying is bypass the mind if you can divert it and pray or even meditate or something with the intention to show me where this is coming from. Let me feel it fully. And then that way you can be free from it. I think that's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
You're really welcome.
That's
You're really
huge.
welcome. Another way
huge.
that if you're not comfortable with that, it's really good to do writing, like to, write down what it is and ask it in writing, and sometimes you can bypass the conscious mind and it kind of, really gets into the subconscious mind and like truth can come out that you'll go, wow, where's this coming from? So writing is a good way to get the answers.
That's really cool. Brandy, you're awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there's always some gem or what we're doing is we actually are listening in for and digging in for like some bit of gold. And I know you've shared a lot of really great things, but you may know this and my listeners certainly know this. It's just like, as great as it is to believe in life after death, which is awesome. Nothing is better, I don't think, to believe your loved ones are still around and we go on and stuff. But it's like, well, then what is life for? And how to live the most empowering life. And by everything you're up to, I mean, that's what you're out to do, whether it's the things you've done with Tony Robbins or now your own courses and your own book, to share with people really to have the best life possible.
Absolutely. That's what I want more than ever for anybody, because I know how I used to feel and then I know how I feel now and I know how much better it is. And I don't want anybody to feel what I used to feel because that was hell. And so I'd like to help people get that same freedom that I now have.
It's really good. Really good. Do you have any? I'm just excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling much better, even though I'm still sniffling. Do you have any closing words, or if you want to share what your websites are? I know I shared them in the beginning, or how people can get in touch with you and find out more about you, your book, your programs.
Yeah, well, the title, my website is jumptoabetterlife.com, and my where they could easily find my book is brandysbook.com, and I also, if people just want to check it out on my website, jumptoabetterlife.com, they can get 3 chapters for free, and they can check it out and see if it interests them, that would
good.
That's just a gift.
And
like to check it out.
For our listener too, when you go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com and you click on episode 80, which is Brandy Faith Weld, I'll have her biography plus a link to her book and her website, just to make it a little bit easier in case you didn't pull out a pen and write it down just now. Well, I want to thank you, Brandy, for being on the show today. I want to thank our listener for taking your valuable time and being here. And also, something Brandy had said to us actually, towards the beginning, when she really got that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So she asked the question, what kind of human experience do you want to have? And go live it. So I think some pretty valuable words to leave us with today. And in closing, I just, again, want to thank our guest, Brandy Faith Weld, you, our listener, for being here. And this is Sandra Champlain. I have been your host on We Don't Die Radio. I do believe with all my heart that our lives are an education for our souls, and that our lives here on earth truly are important. So again, thank you for listening and have a great day.